On today's show, the Atlanta Hawks had their third consecutive loss, this time without Trae Young and by a lopsided margin at the hands of the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll get into all of how it happened and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1872 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Saturday evening, deep into the night here into Sunday. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get on the regular season action as well with FanDuel, because right now, if you're a new customer, get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube. Please like this video as you are watching it and tell your friends about the podcast. Forgive me on the podcast today. I'm playing hurt a little bit with my voice, so hopefully it holds up throughout the show. But we'll dive in today to what became a 128-112 loss for the Hawks at home against the Grizzlies, their third straight defeat. And honestly, a game that was not as close as the final score indicated, to be honest with you. The Hawks were without Trae Young in this game, which is an important piece of context. At the same time, the Grizzlies were also without their best player in Ja Morant. I did say before the game, and I would say again right now at the top of the show, it's not revisionist at all, that the Grizzlies are much, much better set up with their roster and situation, et cetera, to play without Ja Morant than the Hawks are without Trae Young. And I called that shot ahead of time, and it became the case later on. But really, this game began and essentially ended in the first quarter. So the Hawks had their worst defensive quarter in quite some time. To begin this game in the first quarter, they were down by 24 points at halftime. It was better in the second half, I would say overall, generally speaking, but never really made a run. It was within 15 at one point in the third quarter, but never really got the feeling that the wave was coming for the Hawks. It never did. They were down by 20 plus when the garbage time period began, and the Hawks made some shots in the fourth quarter, but it was not a competitive game for the most part. They're down 16 points in a hurry and never really recovered. So big picture, I'll say this. It's one game. It's not a great performance at all. It was their worst performance in quite some time, even when you factor in the absence of Trae. I would guess that maybe they were worse against Denver in what became like a 30-point home loss a couple weeks ago. No Jalen in that game as well, so that's kind of been a theme. When the Hawks don't have Jalen Johnson or Trae Young, they're not very good. At the same time, that was a night when you're playing against the best player in the league, basically, in Nikola Jokic. Tonight, it felt winnable. The Hawks were actually only 3-point underdogs, even without Trae, in this one at FanDuel. Now, they were underdogs for a reason. I thought the Hawks were going to be underdogs in the game for, in my opinion, they were underdogs as well. But this game was not competitive for the most part, which is definitely frustrating. And I want to begin with the defense because the theory always, even as someone who thinks Trae Young is an improved defender, and he is an improved defender in the last couple of years, especially this year, the Hawks' best way and really their proven pathway to being competitive when Trae does not play in these one-off games, basically, is that they're able to defend better with him off the floor. And that makes sense. Trae Young is still, even though he's improved, not a great defender. But the theory of that did not happen in this game. And that was evident from the beginning of the game. So they end this game with a 116 defensive rating, which actually isn't that bad. But it was 103 in the fourth quarter when the game was not competitive at all. And Memphis kind of pulled the plug on their guys. It was well over 120 through three quarters, and it was 137.7 defensive rating in the first half. Some of that is Memphis making shots. I will give them credit for that as the Quinn Snyder postgame, but only some of it. There was some noise for sure. Like, I think if you replayed all the shot attempts in the first half, they wouldn't make that many of them all the time. But the Hawks defensively were not very good at the point of attack. Memphis had 69% true shooting in the first half. Like, that was a little bit high probably, but they had a lead shooter in the entire game, basically. The Hawks did a pretty good job on the glass in this one, and they did a pretty good job forcing turnovers. The Grizzlies had, I think, 18 turnovers in the game. But they gave up way too many good looks in the competitive portion of the game. Their containment of the ball, basically, was not good enough, especially in a game when, again, the pitch is without Trae, you have no weak spots. Other than Bogey and casual Larry Nance at center, like, you have a good defender in theory at every spot. But that did not play out in this game at all. Without naming everybody on the roster that struggled, like most guys, I think defensively had a pretty rough game, other than maybe Dyson and Capella, maybe a couple plays by Hunter along the way. Ricochet was actually pretty solid as well, but I thought Veet was really bad defensively in this game. Jalen not his best defensively in this one. Nance is never particularly good defensively. Bogey was pretty bad, I thought. Keaton Wallace was fine, but defensively overall, it was not good enough from the Hawks team, even with, again, the caveat that Memphis did shoot the ball really well in this one. You know, I'll say this. I said already about the theory about Trae, but this is their worst defensive game, at least since the Denver game 2 weeks ago. And you could arguably that it was actually even worse in that game than that game, because that night there was no Jalen, who all year long the Hawks defensively have cratered with Jalen off the floor, and you're facing Jokic. So, like, you could argue this might have been their worst defensive game since the Dallas game, which is about 4 weeks ago at this point. And throughout this whole run, I've been saying on the show, if you're listening regularly or if you're not, if you're just joining the show now, the Hawks, when they won 7 out of 8 games, were winning on defense heavily in that stretch. And tonight, there was no way they were going to win this game with their offense. They could have been better offensively, as we'll get to in just 1 second, but they had to be good defensively to win this game, and they just were not. And that's why I started with that end of the floor in this one. Offensively, it was pretty ugly in this one. A 102 offensive rating for the game. It was well below 100 until garbage time. So 100 is already bad, and it was well below that coming in. Just to kind of put a point on that, the Hawks shot really awesome in the fourth quarter when it didn't matter at all. They were 7 of 11 from 3 in the fourth quarter to make things look better than they actually were. Before that, after 3 quarters, they were shooting 43% from the field and 7 of 27 from 3. So that was pretty well below average. And then they kind of bumped their numbers up when it didn't matter. Let's just say those numbers were misleading. But the real problem beyond the shot making was the fact that the Hawks turned the ball over like crazy. And I won't play the audio for you now because it was a little bit muffled quality-wise. I did share it on Twitter if you were interested in this, or my Patreon. But I asked Quinn Snyder pregame about ball security because, as I've been saying for quite some time, the Hawks have had some ball security issues this season on the whole. They've just been okay in ball security. The Hawks are actually pretty solid with Trae Young on the court, turnover-wise. When Trae sits, they are awful taking care of the ball. And that was true before the game tonight, and now it's even more true. So to put a number on this, with Trae on the court, they're about league average in turnover rate. It's 14-ish%. It's not incredible, but it's fine. With Trae off the court, they came into the night in the bottom 3 of the league in turnover rate, 16-ish%. Now it's over 17%. I believe they're only better than the Jazz if you just take the numbers with Trae off the court. And tonight, they had a 22.7% turnover rate. That is incredibly, ridiculously high, on the way to 25 turnovers. Their second most of the season. Ironically, or not so ironically, the other game they had 27 turnovers. They lost as well to Portland. And again, they should have won. So tonight, you can't necessarily say that they should have won the game, quote unquote, but ball security was a massive, massive problem in this game. And it isn't terribly surprising. Now, as we'll get into more later on in the podcast, they're playing without a point guard. And that means guys are overtaxed. That means that more passes that are more contested. Quinn mentioned not wanting a lot of internal passing because there's kind of can be forced. There were some long bomb passes that were errant in this game. Every kind of turnover that could have happened, dribbling, passing, stepping out of bounds, all those things happened in this game. It was a mess, ball security wise. And I think the defense was probably more of the problem given the personnel, but offensively, that was the point. The Hawks could not sustain offense because they could not take care of the ball in this game. And the Grizzlies ended up with 18 more field goal attempts in this one than the Hawks did. Now, the Hawks took more at the line, so it was only like 13-ish shooting possessions, but the Hawks needed to win that battle, and they lost it badly. So there you go. Ball security was a problem, you can't really fix it necessarily without Trae. I think it's always going to be a problem without Trae, but it could have been better than this. It was a really, really bad performance as far as that is concerned. And they didn't win on the glass either on the offensive side of the floor. They didn't score in the half court very well. And look, the defense was more surprisingly bad in this game because the personnel the Hawks had available tonight was better defensively than offensively. If you just take Trae off the roster, this becomes a defensive first team. That's as simple as I can put it. Trae is their best offensive player by a wide margin. Take him off the team. Most of their personnel remaining is better defensively than offensively. And they couldn't get stops. So that's the bigger problem, but offensively it was really bad too. And broadly speaking, I'll just say this. It's not one of those losses that you want to pull your hair out necessarily. Like losing to the Wizards twice is worse than this. It's pretty obvious to me in a game without Trae Young, but this should have been a competitive game. That's where I would put this, and it wasn't. So that's a bad performance from the Hawks. It's 3 in a row. The fans are getting restless. I get all that. It's an ugly performance. It's a reminder to some potentially that the Hawks do need Trae Young to be successful offensively, but at the same time, it was just a bad performance all the way around. Very few guys played well by their standards. And collectively, it was pretty gross. And the mood after the game was pretty ugly. Quinn was not very pleased, as you might imagine. The locker room was quiet. All those things. Like, it's a bad loss, and we'll leave it there for now. But I'll get into more of the details, et cetera, as far as starting lineups are concerned, how the things unfolded in the first quarter, et cetera, in just one moment. Today's show is sponsored by Skylight Frames. You come from a big family, it can be hard and expensive to buy each person a personal gift for the holidays. If you plan on celebrating the holidays with your friend group, perhaps, you want to surprise them all with something a bit more special and meaningful than booze this year, we have the perfect gift for you. It's Skylight Frames. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame that your whole family or friend group will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. With Skylight Frame, the setup takes actually less than 1 minute, and it takes only a tap on your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. It's the fastest and easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop, and they will feel so much more connected to you with Skylight Frame. It also looks beautiful in your home. Photos are displayed in HD resolution. You can choose from up to 5 different frame styles, plus you can set it up with portrait or landscape mode easily. They have more than 1 million happy customers, and they all appreciate Skylight Frame, including thousands of 5-star reviews, and they're available in more than 30 countries. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase from Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NBA. That is SKYLIGHTFRAME, skylightframe.com/NBA. Get $20 off your purchase right now at skylightframe.com/NBA. All right, so we'll start here with the starting lineup. I saw some, I would say, errant takes about this, but I understand them at the same time. They started to be Krejci at point guard in this game. I was not surprised. And that does not mean that I love that decision. I was not surprised. He's been the backup point guard for the last several games with Kobe Buffkin out of the lineup. He's not a point guard, as I've been saying for a while. He can function there, but it's not his best role. I think the Hawks probably agree with that. But they could have started Keaton Wallace, and they didn't. He played in this game, 23 minutes. He was fine. But Keaton is not as good as Beat overall. And I understand Beat was not good in this game, and he was not. But as far as overall investment, overall talent level, Beat is a better player than Keaton in theory. Now, Keaton's more of a point guard, but even then, Keaton Wallace is kind of a misnomer. Keaton's more of a combo guard. He's more of a shooter, off-ball guard. He's a good defensive point guard, but it's not really him running an offense. It's not really his strength. He's just point guard sized. Anyway, this is something I said before tip-off, so it's not even revisionist now. I would have started Dyson and Bogey together because I don't think Veet and Dyson as a combo in the backcourt, especially with Richeche and Capella, is going to work enough on offense. Now, in this game, as we get to later on, the problems actually were mostly with the bench units in this game, so that's kind of misleading as far as like what actually happened on the court. But the theory of the case, I didn't love that at the beginning of the game, and I would have started Bogey. Even if the Hawks don't really want to do that, I would have in this game. And by the way, we'll come back to this later on. Bogey was not good at all. It was 12-2 Grizzlies to begin the game. The Hawks had 2 points on their first 6 possessions. So that fed into what I just said. Like, it did not seem like a good offensive process to have that lineup on the court together. But after that, the starters were actually fine the rest of the game. It was everything else. They actually rebounded right away from that stoppage. They were 12-4 as far as response from the Hawks. They had the ball in Dyson's hands a little bit more on that stretch. That might have helped. V hit a 3, Richeche hit a 3. Jalen had a nice stretch offensively. I thought the process was clunky at times. I thought Capella was okay in this one, but he took an absolutely awful ISO hook shot against Zach Edey that even I was like, come on, Clint, what are you doing? So anyway, rotationally, they brought in Keaton, Larry Nance, and DeAndre Hunter together mid-quarter. It was the first time Keaton Wallace has played in the NBA in more than a month, November 17th. And I thought it was probably smart to pair Keaton and Larry Nance together, as they did. But Bogey came in a little bit later than that. But I will say this. Defensively, it was a calamity with the second unit. And a lot of that, well, not a lot of it, but some of it, I would trace to playing Larry Nance at center without Jalen at the 4. So to put a number on it in this game, this is actually pretty indicative of what transpired. With Larry Nance on the court in this game, the Hawks had a 133 defensive rating. It's not just Larry Nance, but he was playing center. He's the anchor on that lineup. With Capella on the court as a center, they had a 100 defensive rating, which is actually excellent. Now, offensively, they were bad with Clint, so it wasn't like they were perfect there either. But that kind of on-off made a lot of sense to me in this game. Same thing with defensively when Jalen on the court, they were much better, et cetera, et cetera. But what I'll say is, in the first half stint, that's kind of more indicative of what happened in the game. Fundamentally, and I've said this before, it's not new. If you're going to play Nance at center, which you have to right now without Kongwu available, you need to pair him with Jalen. Because Jalen is a big, physical, rim protecting power forward who can also rebound at a high level. Nance is not very big. He's not a good rebounder at all right now, and isn't a great rim protector at center. So it's logical to me to pair those guys together. I think, especially when your backup power forward is DeAndre Hunter right now, who's playing really well, but defensively is not a huge rim protector or rebounder. So long story short, it's not quite this bad all the time, but the Hawks allowed, wait for it, 17 points in the first 2.5 minutes after Clint and Jalen went to the bench. 17 points in 2.5 minutes in the middle of their worst defensive quarter of a long time. So long story short, like, you kind of lost the game in that stretch. Now, they would have lost the game in many stretches of this game, but that was rough. And that's not the only reason why it happened. Like, the Grizzlies did make a bunch of shots in that stretch that were pretty difficult, for instance. But the process part of that, which I stressed a lot on the podcast, was not good. Like, I think you need to come into this game planning to play Jalen with Nance as much as possible. And they didn't do that in that stretch. Anyway, there was a wild heat from Jake LaRavia of the Grizzlies. Shouts to Stefano, who I was sitting next to tonight. But it was honestly the worst defensive first quarter of the season for the Hawks. They allowed 43 points in the first quarter. Memphis had more than 1.5 points per possession in that first period. And offensively, they had 7 turnovers. That combination is death. And they're down 16 points. It actually could have been worse, honestly. They made some shots late in the quarter, etc. But you're fighting uphill. And I turned to Kevin Chenard of Hawks.com, who I sings to at almost every home game. And I said, at that point, at the end of the first quarter, this is not a good comeback roster the Hawks have. Like, you're down 16. Like, you're going to have to get some incredible defensive performances to come back. And they just didn't obviously do that. I'll be shorter from here. There was a nice sequence in the second quarter. Actually, Capella had a huge block, and Jalen had this massive dunk over Jaren Jackson Jr. that was the highlight of the night for the Hawks. Out of desperation, they threw David Roddy out there for the first time in about a month in the rotation. I'm not even sure what the theory was there, because they were down. He played 2.5 minutes, didn't play terribly, and then came out. I don't really know why they even did that, if that was going to all what they were going to do. But anyway, that happened. Desperation mode there. It was 15 a while in the second quarter. So they were not out of the game at that point. But fast forward, that was close as it was the rest of the game. By halftime, you're down by 20 plus. The Grizzlies hit 5 threes in the second quarter. The Hawks forced 4 turnovers and committed 11 on offense. They had 4 guys at halftime that were minus 19 or worse in plus minus. 3 of them were the bench guys. So to go back to what I said earlier, the bench was really the problem, more so than the starters in this game. There was more mixing and matching after halftime. But in the end, other than Garrison Matthews and Don Barlow and David Roddy, who were only garbage time guys, no one played in the positives. But Ricochet, Capella, and Veet were all -4 or better in a lopsided defeat. So it was most of the bench guys. Hunter was not really his fault, but Nance and Bogey were tough in this one. Second half, we'll fly through. The Hawks turned the ball over twice in a row to begin the second half. Dyson Daniels had a nice stretch. We actually had back-to-back steals, scored 5 straight points to get it back to like 19 early in the third quarter. A little bit of life there. But then the Grizzlies came out of that run and had a 10-1 run, basically to go up by 28. And for me, I made this note, and I haven't changed it since then. I said this game is over in my notes right there. Mid-third quarter, down 28. Now, it wasn't over, but it was functionally. So there was a little bit of a scary moment in the third quarter when Hunter went down holding his ankle. He did he did stay in the game later, I should say. He came out of the game there, but he stayed on the bench. Came back into the game later, seemed to be fine. So hopefully that does not swell up on him. That will be a bad thing for the Hawks right now. And the last thing I'll say about the game flow in this one is just to stay on brand for the people that know this is coming. I thought Quinn left the starters in too long because, I got it. You want to go into the fourth quarter and you're only quote unquote down 21, I think it was going into the fourth quarter. No, 24 going into the fourth quarter. Yeah, 24. And basically from there, it's like, okay, guys, I'll give you one more run at this. If you can get it to like 16 quickly, we'll keep trying. If not, pull the plug, essentially. Not quite that way, but you know what I mean? And the Hawks instead were down 26 after a timeout with 9 minutes to go. And at that point, I was like, all right, get everybody out of there, especially the guys who have injury histories, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, he didn't do that. It didn't bite them, obviously, but just kind of, there was probably 3 minutes that were just kind of silly wear and tear minutes to give to Jalen, to give to Hunter, for instance, et cetera. Anyway, they were out of the game by mid-quarter, but I didn't love that process, as I always kind of say with Quinn. They closed the game. I did say this in Quinn's slight defense. They didn't really have a third unit to go to in this game because you got the G League Showcase happening right now. So Mo Gay is there, for instance. Also, you have an open two-way spot after waiving Seth Lundy. You have the injuries to Buffkin, Okongwu, Trae. But they didn't have guys to go to. It was only Don Barlow and Garrison Matthews that hadn't played yet. So they came in. It was all garbage time. And again, they made it a lot closer than it actually was in the fourth quarter. If you just turn this game off or you turn the box score on, not watch the game at all, 60-point loss. Like, all right, that's not so bad. It was worse than that. They were down 24, 25 for most of the fourth quarter. They got hot late, crossed that off. This is a more lopsided loss than that, and I wouldn't lie to you, I promise. Okay, we'll get into more about the player stuff in a second because I have some notes, especially on guys like Bogey, who I thought was just not good enough in this game, for instance. We'll get into more of that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is sponsored by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up because this is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points and rent payments just like you do with groceries or with travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent or everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points toward flights, hotel stays, and even towards future rent payments. With over 500 airlines, 700,000 hotels in the program, the possibilities are endless at Built Rewards. You can also access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. And personally, I love using points for travel, and Built makes it so easy to turn rent into rewards. If you're already paying rent, why not make it work for you? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That's JOINBILT, joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure to use that URL so that they know that we sent you to them. Don't wait. Start using rewards today. It is joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get on that regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, if you're a new customer, you can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. There's so many ways at FanDuel to pick up your first W this season. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score touchdowns, how many points each of them will score, and so much more. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is really easy to use. Gives you everything that you actually need to place your bets in one place. And they have also everything you're looking for across the sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads, money lines and game lines, player props, future bets, same-game parlays, live betting, and so much more. The app is safe. It's secure. They cover the entire range of sports at FanDuel. That includes the NBA and the NFL, of course, plus college football, MLB, WNBA, hockey, golf, soccer, all kinds of leagues there across the world, basically. F1, NASCAR on the auto racing side, boxing, MMA, and so much more. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. That's $250 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com if you go there and join today. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, and this might be kind of grim, but here we go with the player-by-player evaluations in this game. We'll start with the guys who didn't play much because they were only in garbage time, basically. David Roddy did play about 2 minutes of real time. He had 5 points on 3 shots. He was fine when he came in. I've long said this, but Roddy's actually helpful offensively. It's just the defense is kind of worrisome, and that was kind of the case in his small sample tonight. Don Barlow, I just started this during the game. I think he's pretty clearly ahead of Mo Gay in the pecking order for the Hawks right now. Does that mean a lot? No, but you get one more injury, you probably have to play Don Barlow. If you watch him play in College Park, you will probably know this already, but offensively, he's really advanced, really smart, good finisher, etc. Defensively, he's got some stuff to work on for sure, but I thought he looked fine in his 5 minutes. Garrison Matthews had 2 threes, took a charge. I was kind of surprised Garrison didn't play more, to be honest with you, although I will say he struggled pretty badly in his last rotation appearance against Denver, basically. But I thought Garrison looked good, played hard, and he always plays hard, so that's good to see. Keaton Wallace, 23 minutes, 5 points, 4 assists for Keaton, 3 turnovers in the game, 1 of 1 on 2s, 1 of 3 on 3s. I thought Keaton offensively was a little bit, he wasn't bad. Just a couple of Carroll's passes, I would say, a little bit over dribbling. He was fine offensively, just didn't do a ton to break down the defense, I would say, overall. Defensively, he was okay. He's always pretty active defensively. He's not the biggest guy, but he is a good on-ball defender. Generally speaking, I thought Keaton did his job. He wasn't great by any means, but I think he was all right. I think his limitations, at least in some corners of Hawks internet, are being underplayed right now. And I think he's not really an initiator. If he was, the Hawks would play him more often. And he still might play more because they're just out of options. That's as simple as I can put it. The Hawks have no point guards. I would argue the Hawks do not have a single point guard available tonight. Actual point guard. You could honestly, their point guard that I would choose probably right now might be Dyson Daniels, to be honest with you. He's played a lot of point guard in his backstory. New Orleans, even before that, G League Ignite. But anyway, it was not great for Keaton, but he was actually fine in this game. A guy that was not fine was Bogey. So if you're a listener regularly, you will know that I have long thought Bogey is highly underrated. I thought Bogey was the best reserve in the NBA last year. I thought he should have won Sixth Man of the Year, and if the Hawks had a better season as a team, he probably would have. I say that to say he's not good enough right now. He's not playing good enough right now. He's not being aggressive enough right now. And this is, I don't want to overstate this too much because I think there's more nuance than this. But Bogey had 6 shooting possessions tonight in 25 minutes in a game without Trae. That can't happen. Now, granted, Memphis was loading to him. I think that was smart by Memphis to load to their best offensive guard in this game, basically, in Bogey. But he just wasn't a big enough factor. And then defensively, he's not good at this point. That's just reality. But he's overhelping and he had a bad game. He was not good in this game. And I think that I would come in with a plan tonight to play Bogey as much as he possibly could have played, in theory, because he's their best offensive guard without Trae. But he just wasn't good enough. And I think the Hawks, generally speaking, need Bogey to be better. I'm sure that's not a shock to him. I think he would probably agree with me on that in a sober moment. But the last 4 games, he's not cracked 10 points. I think he has 10 points a couple times, but it's not just about scoring for Bogey. But this month, he's shooting like 42% from the field, 33% from 3, 10, 11 points a game. Like, he's been okay, but the Hawks need Bogey to be Bogey, and he's not been. So I'm not picking on him. He was not the only guy that was struggling, but I think it was a good time to kind of focus a little bit more on Bogey. Like, he was not enough in this game. And with Trae out, it's not fair to anybody, but Bogey's got to do more with Trae out. That's just natural, and it just didn't happen in this game. DeAndre Hunter continues to be red hot as a scorer. 26 points on 72 possessions for Hunter in this game. Only 1 of 5 from 3, but he was 8 of 9 on 2s. Yeah, there you go. 2 rebounds, no assists. Like, I don't think Hunter had a good game other than the scoring, but he has been making every shot basically for 3 weeks now. It'll cool off at some point, and he did cool off from 3 in this game after shooting like 52% from 3 for the season before today. But he was minus 22. Like, I think defensively was not his best night, nor was it like anybody's best night other than maybe Dyson defensively. And Hunter did make shots though inside the arc. Larry Nance, 7 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, did 3 blocks, but had a couple of bad passes, had 4 turnovers in this game, minus 21. Only 1 of 2 on 2s, but 1 of 6 from 3. Look, Larry has been out of his mind as a shooter this year, and that was not going to continue no matter what. Like, I think Larry Nance is a pretty good shooter for a big. He was shooting 50-something% from 3 coming into the night. Like, that's not a real number for Larry Nance, no matter what. Oh, sorry. Coming into the night, it was 60% from 3 on the season for Larry Nance. That's not going to continue. So no issues there. I think defensively, it's just hard to anchor with Larry as your backline guy, especially without Jalen. I did the whole rant earlier. Won't do it again. He didn't play very well in this one. He's not alone at all. Did a 4 assists. The passing was okay at times, just got a little bit aggressive a few different times. But I thought he was not like a huge problem, just not a huge solution either. And defensively, it was pretty rough. To the starters, Richache, 22 minutes, 10 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist for Zach. He actually played well. I thought, didn't do a ton on offense, but I thought was active as a cutter, played good defense, and that was reflected. He was only -1 in the game. Like, the Hawks did okay in his minutes. And I won't do this rant now in full. If you're using the word bust with Richache, you are not watching. And I tried to warn people against this all summer long, that he was not going to be a traditional number 1 overall pick who's going to put up big numbers. I said that repeatedly. Also, there was no one in this draft, and that is still very much the case now. If you look around the league, there was not a number 1 overall pick in this draft. And I said that the whole time. I wasn't banging on the table to take Richache. Then I wouldn't tell you that now. But he's a good prospect. He's playing helpful, winning level basketball. And offensively, he's got a long way to go, to be sure. But he's playing useful basketball right now as a 19-year-old. I'm like, acting like he's a bust is insanity, and I want to just say that out loud. Okay. Elsewhere, Vit Krejci. So it was a rough one for Vit. Now, I think that 2 things can be true at the same time. Last year, I said this a lot. Vit had breakouts as a shooter and as a defender last year at the end of the season compared to his previous baseline. And I argued this offseason that as long as one of those 2 things holds, 3-point shooting or his defense, he's a value on that contract that he got. It's a very cheap deal, etc. In this game, neither held. And this season, defensively, he's not been as good as he was last year. 3-point shooting hasn't been as good as it was last year, and that's tough. Now, I will also say, at the same time, they're putting Vit in a bad spot. Vit is not a point guard. They know that, I think, on some level. But, and especially when you're playing with Dyson, there isn't a lot of shooting on the floor. Like, his best trait, full stop, is his passing. Vit is a good passer. but Vita is a secondary passer. He's not a primary initiator. So, like, yeah, he still has some great flashes as a passer. He had 3 assists in this game, but he had 5 fouls defensively. I think it was probably his worst defensive game that I've seen him play in like 6 months, in like maybe a year. It was tough defensively in this one. Point of attack, not there. Offensively, he was okay, but just doesn't do a lot usage-wise. Yeah, I don't want to rant about it too much. It's not his fault necessarily, but it's not a good beat game at all. Especially defensively, it was his fault. He did not play well at all defensively in this game, which I'll leave there. If there's a bright spot, it's probably Dyson Daniels. 15 points, 6 assists, 6 steals for Dyson. Did have 5 turnovers. He was not immune as basically, I believe everyone in the rotation, everyone that played rotation minutes had a turnover in this game. And I believe, everyone other than Hunter and Ricochet had more than one. There you go. 25 turnovers in the game. Everyone gave the ball away, but Dyson led the team with 5. Now, he was still really, 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 really good defensively. 6 steals, good passing sometimes from Dyson, 3 of 4 on 2s, 3 of 5 from 3. He took actually a really aggressive 3 that I liked on a pull-up. He was not perfect in this game, but I thought it was a nice bounce back from him after he had the a couple of rough shooting games previously. I would like to see more Dyson on the ball right now if Trae is out. Because I think that, we saw the Boston game. Obviously, that's a one game sample size that I would not use as a comparison point many times. But in that game without Trae that they won, it was a lot of Dyson on the ball. And I don't think that's his best role either, to be very clear. But Dyson has a history of playing point guard. If you have him there, you can put a real shooter next to him. Like you can get away with playing Garrison Matthews if he's playing next to Dyson. You can get away with starting Bogey if you're playing him between Dyson and Ricochet defensively. For instance, it just gives you a lot more options. I'm not saying playing point guard all the time is not his best position, but I think that he's probably your best option in that role right now if Trae is not there. Clint Capella, 8 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks. I think defensively, Clint was good in this game. Offensively, he was not. A couple of bad shots around the rim, missed 2 free throws. Did finish a couple of lob dunks. Like he always gave them some verticality in this game. But I thought grading on a curve, he was not one of the worst guys in this one, but not a great game for him either. His defense was pretty good. And then Jalen Johnson. Good first half from Jalen. He finished the game with 13 points, 11 rebounds, and 8 assists. The passing was there, but he was -16. He was only 3 of 9 on 2s, 1 of 3 from 3. He was the best player in the first quarter for sure for the Hawks. After that, he was okay. Like he wasn't the problem in this game, but I would like to see him. Obviously, you want him to be a little bit better than this without Trae. But I thought for me, the focus on a guy who struggled too much without Trae tonight was Bogey. You need more from Bogey. Jalen was okay. He'll have better nights than this. But I'll leave it there. Okay, I am done ranting, and hopefully my voice will hold up for about 1 more minute. The Hawks play again on Monday evening against Minnesota at home. This is their second of 4 straight games at home on Monday. The Wolves lost at home tonight to the Warriors by about 10 points. They're a good team. I'll say that. Now, they're not having a great season so far, are the Wolves. I believe, as we're talking, they're 14-13, so pretty roughly where the Hawks are. Hawks 14-15, Wolves 14-13. But I will say this, they're still a team that made the conference finals last year, and they have a lot of talent, so that's an interesting test for Atlanta. We will see if Trae can go on Monday. The question really is, it's tough to say how close he was to playing today. He was listed as questionable coming into the game. He was ruled out before the game before he warmed up. So he wasn't a true decision before the game. But if he was close-ish today, he might play Monday. We'll see. We saw tonight, it's gonna be a test if Trae doesn't play offensively. We'll see about Hunter with the ankle thing that he might have had today, but again, he came back in the game. Okongwu was out, Bucket is out, etc. But it's kind of a similar spot to tonight. You're playing a team that's, if you polled the league, is quote unquote better than you, but you're at home and they're not playing great. And if Trae plays, that's a spot where they can certainly maybe sneak out a win at home and reset things a little bit. But we'll circle that one. We'll have full coverage of that game as we always do on the podcast. All right, that's all I have. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for the patience for my voice on this show. Please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcast on the audio side. We are also on YouTube. Please like this video as you are watching it and subscribe there. Tell your friends, etc. Follow the show on Twitter/X, Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow me on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. And I'm also at patreon.com/BT Rowland for all of your non-podcast Hawks coverage needs and some Brave stuff there occasionally as well. Thanks for listening, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you, barring big news. The next show will be Monday evening. So we'll see you all next time.